Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What an intimate, friendly-looking bunch. I see some smiles out there, a couple of you. Hope you've had a chance to enjoy some breakfast out front, or at least grab some coffee or caffeine, at least to get you awake and going. We're gonna have some fun today. I hope you're gonna enjoy what we're gonna do. My name is Eric Flynn. I'm the Assistant Director for Graduate Business Admissions here at the University of San Diego. I'm also an Adjunct Professor of Marketing, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today. So thank you for being a part of what we're gonna do today. I want to read this. The need for great leadership is more important than ever before. In the news we hear stories of countless leaders, failing themselves and failing those to whom they serve. We hear stories of ego and power and corruption and incompetence. Unfortunately, too common, aren't they? Well, today you may have been risen through the ranks of your organization, or you might be an aspiring leader. But here at the University of San Diego, we're celebrating the work of the next generation of leaders. And we hope that you're going to find today that what it takes to become a great leader. We're going to teach you what that means. We're going to hear some stories from professionals who are going to share, why leadership doesn't just happen, but it'll give you a peek into the path that has helped other leaders that have come before you and has helped countless organizations succeed as well. So thank you again for being here. It's our pleasure and honor to have you as our guest. It's also my pleasure. Very good. It's also my pleasure to welcome Dr. Jaime Gomez, the USD's Dean of the School of Business, to kickstart our conversation. So, Dean Gomez.
It is indeed great to start the day together. We're going to celebrate a very intellectually stimulating and cognitively seductive conversation with Ken and Garry and Ken. Here in the School of Business,
Barbara. And Barbara.
And Dr. Barbara Lougee, Associate Dean of Graduate Studies in the School of Business. It is a great way to start the day, indeed.
You wore the black suit after all.
Right.
Our purpose in the School of Business is to educate socially responsible and internationally competitive leaders who positively transform lives and communities. As Eric was kind of saying and sharing with us, we are in a VUCA environment: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And this VUCA environment implies the acquisition and development of new skills. So we want to understand leadership in a new context, in this purpose, in this new economy, in ways such as, for instance, the capacity to strategize and execute in effective ways in a global arena. We also need to understand and behaviorally be effective how to lead and motivate cross-cultural workforces in several languages, how to do rapid design, and how to make the complex simple. This is just a sample of the new skills that we need to develop in a new global economy. So leadership implies new knowledge and new skills. But we also, in our purpose, include that we positively transform lives and communities. The Tijuana-San Diego economy is a $230 billion economy. If we co-produce new wealth of the 21st century, we will be able to move from 230 to 250. And if that is the case, we're going to be able to become one of the top largest 50 economies of the world. But size is not what really matters here. Now that we have here Dr. Amir Takata, he's the director of the Center for Peace and Commerce, because it is our purpose to co-produce new wealth, a wealth that implies socially responsible, ecologically friendly, profit creation in order to produce peace and prosperity, the bottom line approach to the business enterprise: people, planet, profit, peace, and prosperity. We really see the role of the business enterprise as a proactive agent for this particular approach. As it is obvious, just look at the news, read the news. Governments and institutions are insufficient to produce peace and prosperity. What about if we re-envision the business enterprise with this bottom line approach? So we really believe that leaders require new knowledge, new skills, but also re-envisioning the business enterprise. In our master's in science in executive business leadership, what we are having here this morning, we will definitely acquire knowledge and skills inherent to the new economy. But we will also, collectively with our peers and professors, we will also enrich and enhance our judgment, the capacity to analyze, synthesize, discern, and decide. It is important to develop judgment, especially in the presence of so many fake news. So we really need to develop a position. So knowledge and skills are fundamental, but judgment is a fundamental element in building leadership. But yes, knowledge, skills, and judgment are good. But what about the need to live with the consequences of the decisions that we make? Character. So after judgment, after making a decision, we need to have the stomach to be able to live with the consequences of the decisions that we make. Those are fundamental, essential characteristics of the new leadership that we will be able to develop here in our Master of Science in Executive Business Leadership. In the School of Business, we understand that the future can be in 3 different ways. The future comes to me and captures me. That is scenario number 1. Scenario number 2, I adapt to the future. Darwin, I basically equalize the conditions of the environment. And number 3, we create futures. A proactive change maker mentality. Well, in order to actually forge that future, trust is another fundamental element. In the last 20 years in which we have had this Master of Science in Executive Leadership, character, trust, judgment are pillars of the education that we receive in this program. So, ladies and gentlemen, this morning we will hear from the 3 speakers here, starting with Dr. Lougee, Dr. Blanchard, and Mr. Ridge, that all of these knowledge, skills, judgment, character, trust will be fundamental drivers to follow our passion, which is essential to developing a more prosperous and peaceful society. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Dean Gomez. It's my pleasure and my honor, actually, to present our 3 esteemed panelists this morning. I'd like to start by introducing the man who probably needs no introduction here today. Dr. Ken Blanchard is one of the most influential leadership experts in the world. He's co-author of the iconic bestseller, The 1-Minute Manager, and more than 60 other books with more than 21 million copies translated into 42 languages. In 2005, he was inducted into Amazon.com's Hall of Fame as one of the top 25 best-selling authors of all time. He's co-founder with his wife, Margie, of the Ken Blanchard Companies, an international management consulting group and training firm. The MSEL program came together with the vision of Ken Blanchard, and he'll share how his partnership with the University of San Diego came to help us to think about new levels of leadership that we so desperately need. Next to him, on his right, is Mr. Garry Ridge. Garry wins the award for the best accent here this morning. next to Dean Gomez, of course. He was in the very first cohort of the MSEL program, and not to age Garry, but as Dean Gomez says, we're now getting ready to enroll cohort 20, so you do the math. And we'll begin that this fall. You will. As CEO of the world-renowned WD-40 Corporation since 1997, Garry will share what he learned in the MSEL and how it helped transform not only the culture of his organization, but also how it contributed to the growth and financial success that followed. Garry also teaches in the MSEL program, so he'll also share how his classroom experience in the MSEL contributes to learning at a higher level. And I'm very excited that Dr. Barbara Lougee will be with us today as well. Barbara is the Associate Dean of Graduate Programs and an Associate Professor of Accounting here at USD. She teaches in the MSEL program as well, where she brings a fantastic balance of academic life to industry experience. Barbara earned her MBA and doctorate at Cornell University. She's an award-winning teacher and highly respected researcher in the fields of financial reporting and corporate social responsibility. Her industry experience includes working with organizations such as Morgan Stanley, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, or FASB, and Science Applications International Corporation, SAIC. She'll help us understand why core business knowledge, in addition to leadership skills, is more important to executives than ever before. So if I could, I'd like to start with our first series of questions. We're going to ask each of the panelists some questions and hear their stories, but I'd like to start, if we could, with Dr. Lougee. So, Barbara, let's start, if we can, with your specialty. We have guests today that are in many different roles and levels within your organizations, and let's assume that many of you may not work in the role of finance or accounting, just for a second. Why is finance and accounting important to every leader, and what is the impact to an organization if we're not strong or we are strong in those areas?
So I'll talk a little bit about my course, which is, by the way, one of the most dreaded courses in the MSEL program. And everybody survived so far. The reason that our leaders need a breadth of core business knowledge, including finance and accounting, is because in order to create a culture where the company or organization collaborates as one, the leaders must understand the perspectives across the different functional areas of the organization. So for example, if the CEO comes from a sales or marketing background, the CEO must be able to have an intelligent conversation with the finance professionals. The CEO also, in order to create that collaborative culture, must understand some of the challenges that the professionals in the finance or accounting area of the company face. In order to do that, the leader needs some basic knowledge and literacy in finance and accounting. Secondly, and this is a more general comment, in order to foster effective communication across the organization, again, the CEO needs to be able to communicate with some basic knowledge of the functional areas. And effective communication has been an issue at every organization that I've worked in, whether we're talking about academia or Morgan Stanley or other institutions. And finally, let's talk about my class more specifically. One of the things that we do in my class is I have students read a book called The Number. It's written by New York Times journalist Alex Berenson. And the book discusses the history of our capital markets and then all of the occurrences that led up to the tech boom and then the tech bust. And basically, why did the tech boom and bust happen? Our system of checks and balances failed across the board. And why did that happen? Because no one was asking the hard questions. So some basic finance and accounting knowledge will enable someone who is not a finance or accounting professional to sense when something is wrong and ask the hard questions.
Very good, thank you. Speaking of, not speaking of corruption, but speaking of things that could go wrong in an organization when the checks and balances aren't there, we've unfortunately heard so many stories, and we've heard the term creative accounting, and I think we all kind of understand what that means. But we continue to hear reports about how deception is occurring within ourselves, with our own relationships and things with people we know, and our organizations. So, for every story we hear, there's probably 10 or more that we don't hear. And so my question is, why are ethics so important to leaders? And, what does the MSEL program develop in leaders that help them be better?
Again, going back to the tech boom and bust, part of the why was that leaders were focused on short-term gains, and they lost sight of the big picture. Again, they did not ask the hard questions. If they had asked the hard questions, maybe the tech bust and boom would not have been as severe as it was.
Knowing the questions to ask is certainly important, as well as maybe understanding yourself and understanding what we should be doing as organizations in order to know what we should be doing.
And making the hard decision to not just maximize my personal wealth, but again, to look beyond that and ask the questions, do the right thing.
I think that's a trend we'll begin to hear in the conversations of this notion of self being too important and what we can do to deflect from that, and maybe there's something else we can focus on that would achieve that. Thanks, Barbara. All right, Gary, sorry about that over there. You look like I've offended you, and I don't want to do that.
How?
I think he's stewing on the age thing for a second.
No. Not at all.
No, we love Gary. Gary's a...
Good hairdo, though.
Absolutely.
yes. Gary, we've all seen bottles of WD-40. If not in our own garages, then it's one of the most iconic brands that the world recognizes. And you've been CEO of this organization for over 20 years. You were one of also Ken Blanchard's first students in the MSEL program. So going way back in the day, what prompted you to desire this need to get a master's degree? And what was it about the MSEL that intrigued you? And if you don't mind sharing, what was it like to be Ken Blanchard's student? What did you learn?
Can I tell the truth, Ken? Thank you. Back in 1997, I got the opportunity to lead WD-40 Company, and I had this question in my mind, what do I think I know, and what do I have to learn? And I looked around for an opportunity to do that, and I happened on to the MSEL program. It was the first cohort. And I'd kind of got my MBA in the street. I'd been running a business for some time. And I really had a conviction to the fact that it's not about me. If we were to grow globally, micromanagement wasn't scalable. So how were we going to create an environment where people had freedom, accountability, responsibility, and care all in one bundle? And I applied, and I was in cohort 1 of the MSEL program. In the final class of the MSEL program, we were asked to put on one page a model that we could execute. And I put that on a flip chart. That flip chart is framed, it hangs outside my office, and it was the model that we used to build the culture at WD-40, which already had a very strong culture, but not one that was going to enable us to really grow outside of the US. And the model was simple. There are 3 things that are important in leadership: vision, values, and learning. And there were the 2 things that management always focused on: planning and executing. And I called the planning and executing the typhoon zone. Because if all you do is plan and execute, and you don't take time to develop the vision, the people, and the values, and more importantly, you didn't have an organization of learning, that would eventually destroy you. Now, I have a great deal of respect for the accounting profession, Barbara. Thank you, and I really do appreciate you. Your reference to sales and marketing and accounting talking, so thank you for that. But I was reflecting as you said that I've been watching a show on Netflix called Dirty Money. And the first 2 episodes of Dirty Money, the first one is about VW, and the second one is about payday loans. Both organizations had extremely competent accountants. What caused those organizations to fail? They either had very poor values, or they had values that they chose to violate. So I think in organizations today, we can hire the best accountants, the best lawyers, the best finance folks, the best marketers, the best everything. But if we don't create a culture where care, candor, accountability, and responsibility are the underpin of organizations, we will end up with what we have today. And I wrote an article about this last week. I shared it with Ken, called Soul-Sucking CEOs. And what we have is an environment where there are soul-sucking CEOs, or let's call it soul-sucking leadership. And this is an environment where the culture that is created does not create an environment where people go to work every day, they make a contribution to something bigger than themselves, they learn, they're safe, and they go home happy. It creates exactly the opposite, and the outcome of that is, which is sad today, 66% of people who go to work hate their jobs. And that's costing the global economy $2.1 trillion a day. How many people could we feed with $2.1 trillion? And whose fault is it?
Not you personally, but
I hope not.
Well, Ken, I'm not Ken. Garry, you're not the only alumni of WD-40, are you? There's been several others that have gone through the program, the MSEL program. Do you remember the number? Can you share the number? And more importantly, can you tell us what impact having more people like you in the organization has had?
Pete's one of our alumni. Hey, Pete, how many is it? 25 or 26 people we've put through the President's Path to Leadership. What is the advantage of it? We all start talking the same language. And we're able to embed the important parts of the learning in the organisation. Now, let me just say that over this 20-year period, our employee engagement has gone from low 40s, high 30s, which is the average today, to 93%. So 93% of our people are globally engaged. 98% of our people say they love working at WD-40 Company. By the way, over that period of time, for the finance folks, our market cap has gone from $250 million to $1.8 billion. But we just sell oil in a can, right? No, we don't. No, we don't. Our purpose is we sell memories. We're in the memories business. So we've proven over this period of time that building culture is simple but not easy, and time is not your friend. You can't go and sprinkle fairy dust over an organisation and tomorrow it'd be right. I remember in the early days of MSEL, someone saying to me, I'd just drunk too much of Ken Blanchard's Kool-Aid. And, if we ignore you long enough, this thing will go away. And I said, maybe not. And that's what we can be proud of. So delighted.
And you probably shared them with your competition, didn't you?
I probably shared a few of them with the competition, yes.
Oh my gosh. So for people who know me, know that I'm a huge soccer nut. And Landon Donovan, one of our greatest U.S. national soccer team players, went through a dry patch. I don't know if you guys know this. So he was not scoring goals, and he wasn't playing as well. He was getting more injured. And he stopped for a while. He quit. Took a break. And when he came back, he started doing amazing and awesome. And a reporter asked him, why are you doing so well? What's different? He's like, well, I'm happy. I'm enjoying the game. When I enjoy the game, I play better. And I think that's related to what we're talking about, that not happiness isn't we all want to be happy, don't we? But a happier employee makes a more performance-driven employee, more effective employee. The relationships you have in your organizations are better.
One point on that, I'm embarrassed to tell you what slow learners we are. Aristotle was born in 384 BC. He said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. We are really slow learners.
Right. I think you feel like he was looking at me particularly when you said that.
It's got a complex today, eh?
I understand, Professor. Thank you. You also teach in the MSEL program, and you're so proud. There's so many students that have said such great things about you as a teacher. You teach a course about succession planning and talent management related to this. What do students learn in that course? And if you can, kind of help the students or the potential students who are interested, what's that experience like?
Well, it's fresh on my mind. We just taught the class this past weekend. Friday, Saturday, half a Sunday at WD-40's new teepee up in Scripps Ranch. The course is not named correctly. It's not really just about succession planning and talent management. It's about how do you put together a cultural framework that allows succession planning and talent management to be successful. So we spend a lot of time talking about the people. We call ourselves a tribe, not a team. So what's the attributes of building a tribal culture which is based on respecting people and having them know that they belong. One of the biggest human desires we have is to belong. Everyone in this room has either left a party or a relationship or some organization because they didn't feel like they belong. So we talk about that. We talk about, and we use examples of values. What are values in the organization, and how do values set you free, not to hold you back? And we bring in some great learning. Marshall Goldsmith, the #1 coach in the world, has been involved in our program for 10 years. Most years he comes to the class personally. He didn't come this week, he was in Mumbai, but he came by and we did a personal video that we did. We bring in people and work from people like Simon Sinek, some of the cutting edge stuff that's out there. So hopefully, and at the end of the class, we ask the final paper is write a letter to your CEO on how you would recommend they can improve the culture and of the organization. Now, everybody writes the letter. Some send them, some don't. I've got every letter from my...
Is that blackmail, or what do you do?
No. Well, they don't have to send it to me, but they do. And I'm so glad they did, because we've learned from that feedback as well. So the class that we're in, and I'm the brawn, my brains in the class is Dr. Janice Thompson, who's got a PhD in organizational development, so she's the brains. But it's really a time of sharing and learning about how you build a culture that is a place where that delivers a place where people want to go to work every day because they know they're making a contribution to something bigger than themselves and they're learning.
Love it. Thank you, Garry. And I smile because I just can't believe I'm on the stage interviewing Ken Blanchard, one of my heroes. Just the work that he's done has been fantastic, and it's just an honor to be here. So thank you, Ken, for being here today. Going back in the Wayback Time Machine again, I'm going to ask you to think about what prompted the desire to create a specialty degree. You'd been in education, you'd been working, writing, doing all these great things. What prompted you to consider the need for something beyond the business training that we were getting at the time, and what led to that relationship, that partnership with the University of San Diego?
Well, what happened at that time is I looked at all the MBA programs all over the world, and none of them were teaching anything about leadership. They were tucking it in an organizational behavior class. I think we've gotten better in MBA since that time, but at that time, it was just a sidetrack as one of the subjects in an organizational behavior class. And I just felt that the world is in desperate need of a different leadership role model, and how could we create a program where we could impact Southern California and other places, because people could come from around the country. And I happened to be playing in the golf tournament here at Torrey Pines, and the head of development was there, and I told him my idea, and he said, well, we got a new dean who is a businessman, and why don't you talk to him? And we did, and it was really pretty amazing. I talked to him in February, and we started advertising for students in September. That just doesn't happen in academia, something that quick. And I just felt that we just needed to have a real trend about leadership. And I think effective leadership is a transformational journey. It begins with yourself. Most of the leaders I have found who are destructive in organization are scared little kids inside. They don't know who they are. And as a result, they're protecting themselves, and that comes out with self-serving and control needs and all. So we start with the whole program starts with taking a look at yourself. In fact, there's 3 courses that we take a look at. Drea Zagarmi and Susan Fowler, who are both great authors and people, do a whole self-leadership week. It starts in the end of the summer. And then Vicki Halsey, who's amazing, teaches a whole course on what is your learning style and how can you learn more. And then my wife and I teach a course on what's your leadership point of view, what's your beliefs about leading and motivating people, where did that come from, who were your models as you grew up, and what did you learn from them, and what does this mean and all. So self starts the whole thing off. And then we move to one-on-one leadership, which is how do you build a sense of trust with another person. And so we really spend time on how do you really partner for performance with somebody, how do you help them win and all. And then from there we move to team leadership, which is now you're trying to develop a sense of community, and running a team is different than running an individual. And then we end the leadership portion of the program with organizational leadership, and Gary's course is involved in organizational leadership, which is more complicated than the teams because now you're leading a whole team. And so what's really is fabulous is that thread throughout. And then what is really amazing, we've been kidding about Barbara and all, but the faculty at USD do just a tremendous job of teaching some of the basic concepts of business, like accounting and finance and marketing and all, but they do it in a way that's to help you be better at what you do. One of the things you got to remember in this program, you don't write papers where we send you to the library to go research in the books and all. Every paper the students write is in relation to how what they've just learned applies to their own organization. And so that's why the kind of thing is really a powerful thing. And so we're just really proud of the thing. And that, in fact, there are other companies don't have quite as many as WD-40, but send the number of people as their executive development program. And just to tell you why I think the whole thing is different, we have dinner the night before graduation with the people that graduate from our program. And at the end of the dinner, I have a microphone and I go around and have each of the students talk about what they got out of the program. And it's a real emotional sharing. A number of people even actually end up crying. I remember one time a guy, we were videoed, and he came up to me and he said, "Is this an MBA program?" I said, "Well, it's related and all." He said, "I did a filming at an MBA program, and they were talking about the advantages it had on their careers and their promotions and all. Your people were talking about what a difference made with their families and whatever." One of the things Margie and I love at that dinner is to see the spouses come up with almost tears in their eyes saying, what a difference this program has made in our marriage and our family and all. Because we say that leadership is not just an organizational business thing, it's an influence process. And anytime you're trying to influence somebody else, you're engaging in leadership. And I just want to say that if you go in this program, you're a special person because we do not have the well-known aspect of saying, I have an MBA. That has a nice ring out in the community. You say I have an MSEL, and they go, what the hell is that? You know, and all that. So you have to really come in here like Garry did because you really want to learn. You don't want to necessarily put another thing in your career button for your advancement, although it will do. So I think that's what's exciting about the thing. And we've just feel so blessed to work with the university on this. It really is. We're looking at the curriculum again right now. We're continuing to listen to the students and upgrading. How can we even make it better so it's not a one and done program?
Well, one of the things that we notice about the cohorts, the students that come in, many actually already have an MBA. They have a business degree. And the executive leadership program is a business degree, but like Ken was saying, it's everybody understands the MBA. You know what that means. That's a translated definition that employers respect and understand. The value, I think, what we say here is the executive leadership is something you have to explain, and that's not a bad thing. It's a conversational starter. It's a way for you to be different, to differentiate yourself between other leaders and executives. So it's a positive thing. It's a complement to the other master's programs that you may have or may be considering. But on that same subject, so some may not have heard or understand a term I think we've used here today, and if they've read anything about you, Ken, they'll know this word, and that's what the word servant leadership means. Mm-hmm. So if you would, from yourself, would you explain what that means and why we develop servant leaders here in executive leadership?
Well, it's really important. And I have a book coming out on March 6th. It's the biggest project I've ever worked on. That's called Servant Leadership in Action, because I think the world is in desperate need of a different leadership role model. We've seen what self-serving leaders have done. And in this book, I've pulled together 44 people, including Garry, to write short articles. Most reading books, the articles are too darn long and all, and we've divided up into 6 sections in terms of what are the foundations of servant leadership, what are some of the dimensions, who are some exemplars, give some examples of servant leadership in action, turnarounds and all. And so we got everybody in the world, John Maxwell wrote the foreword. And I said, who can we endorse the book? He said, they're all in the book. How can we? So as you open the book, the first 3.5 pages is 44 people, including Marshall Goldsmith, Patrick Lencioni, Francis Hesselbaum, who built the Girl Scouts, and Simon Sinek, and Brene Brown. And, it's just unbelievable that we were able to get these people involved because they all believe that we need a movement. And when we talk about servant leadership in business initially, they think I'm talking about the inmates running the prison or trying to please everybody or some kind of religious movement. No, it's the only way to get great results and great human satisfaction, because there's two parts of servant leadership. One is the one that Garry was really talking about, is vision and values and goals and direction. Leadership's about going somewhere. And it's the responsibility of the hierarchy to make sure that everybody knows, what do we stand for? What are we trying to accomplish? Where are we going? It doesn't mean you don't involve people, because Gary's involved a lot of people in that, but it's your responsibility to make sure if your people don't know what the goals are in the organization and what they're supposed to accomplish, shame on you. It's your responsibility. That's the leadership part of servant leadership. But once that's done, then you end up turning the pyramid upside down to get to the servant part of servant leadership. And now everybody works for their people, who eventually work for who? The customers. And and the goal is, how do you get them to accomplish it? And one of the things that got Garry, I taught in the first cohort, and every year I was a college professor for 10 years, 4 years at Ohio University and 6 at the University of Massachusetts. I was investigated by some of the biggest faculty committees. But the thing that drove the faculty crazy, I always gave the final exam out the first day of class. And they said, what are you doing? I said, I'm confused. They say, you acted. I said, they're supposed to teach these kids. You are. But don't give them the questions in the final. And I'd say, not only am I going to give them the questions in the final, what do you think I'm going to do all semester? I'm going to teach them the answers. So when they get to the final exam, they get A. Life's all about getting A. It's not some stupid normal distribution curve. I mean, if you're in an organization where they have you screw a certain percentage of your people every year, I'd be happy to talk to them. And Garry and I have gone into organizations with that kind of insanity. I mean, how many of you go out and hire losers? We lost some of our worst people last year. We need to hire some new losers to fill the low slots. No, you either hire winners who steal from other companies, or you hire people with potential. So why you got a normal distribution curve? And so Garry got excited about that concept, and one of the big philosophies at WD-40 is their thing, which is, don't mark my paper, help me get an A. And so when you set goals in the beginning of the year, that's the report card. You want to have 3 to 5 observable, measurable goals, and then the job of the manager is to get people an A average. Duh. I mean, why do they have such good performance, both in terms of the human action, 93%, employee engagement, and the organization is. I'm working on a book now called Duh, which is why isn't common sense common practice? I mean, and so servant leadership is the only way to really get it. And people say, well, who else does it besides WD-40? Well, Southwest Airlines, duh. They're only led to that. Nordstrom's, Disney, Synovus in financial services. They won the best company to work for so often from Fortune magazine. They asked them to stop applying. And they formed a list, Wegmans in the grocery business. Duh, only the leaders in the fields. And that's why a theme throughout the program is the leadership is not about you. It's about the people you work with, and it's about the vision and values that Garry is talking about. And so if you're not interested in that, don't come in the program. Go somewhere else and learn just about the bottom line.
Thank you, Ken. Wow. I'm just going to pause there, and you can just kind of absorb that. Helping you, or when we get to the point where we're ready to think about ourselves, Ken is the spiritual leader of his organizations, and he tells a story. He's told stories to me personally that they have in their organization this sort of ego anonymous. And I think that's where we have to get to, where you set your ego aside and say, it's not about me, it's about helping others. I mean, I can finally get to the point where I'm really to help my family, my kids, my relationships, my neighbor, my company do better, and let myself go. Great things will happen.
And in the program, you will be part of an Egos Anonymous meeting where you stand up and say, hi, I'm Ken, and everybody says, hi, Ken. And then you say, I'm an egomaniac, and then you have to give an example of when your ego, either false pride or fear or self-doubt, got in your way the last 48 hours. And we'd say to the students, if you can't think of something in the last 48 hours, you lie about other things too. But it's like any addiction. If we can identify times when we do it, then we can do something about it.
Yeah, we laugh because we know it's true, right? It's not because we're just humoring Ken Blanchard. We're all aware that we can improve in those areas. So as we wrap up the last part of our conversations, I have one final question that I think we'll all benefit from and we all want to pay attention to, and that is, we all are at different levels in our organizations. Like I said earlier, some of us are just starting out, some of us are veterans, some of us are aspiring to new levels. So my question to our panelists is, what golden nugget do you have that would help anyone at any level where they are, develop to become the leader that they need to be and that they can be?
I got comfortable with the three most powerful words in my life many years ago. And those three powerful words are, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I'm very comfortable being able to say that I don't know. And I think that I know that I've seen many potential leaders fail because they had their ego eat their empathy instead of their empathy eating their ego. Being vulnerable, being okay with not knowing. And I'll finally share the quote, it's a Simon Sinek quote, but I can never get it out of my mind because it's the best definition of leadership I've heard. And he says, leadership is not about being in charge. Leadership is about taking care of those in your charge.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara.
Okay. I will repeat something I said earlier, and that is ask the hard questions. So when I worked at Morgan Stanley, I was fortunate enough to leave in the summer of 2007. And I will tell you that the writing was on the wall. Nobody asked the hard questions.
Well, I think, building a little bit on Garry, I wrote a book with Colleen Barrett, who became president of Southwest right after Herb decided to step down. And she said that people admire your skills, but they love your vulnerability. And I think a lot of people think if you're a leader and you say, I don't know, that shows that you're a weakness. I tell you, the people will just rise right up and say, my God, they already know you don't know everything. And that really means that together we can. And my favorite quote is, none of us is as smart as all of us. And that's really a basic philosophy of what we do in the program.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, panelists, and Dr. Blanchard, Mr. Your name? I don't do last names very well. Garry, Ken, and Barbara. Can we give a hand for our panelists today? Thank you so much.